Hey y'all, it's Lauren with Love is the Universal Answer. For those of you all who don't know me well, if you've not been to my home and had dinner with me, you probably don't know the real me. And don't get it twisted. Just because I am all smiles and love people and laugh all the time, which is all real, doesn't mean I haven't been through some shit. In a weird way, I'm hoping that you all see yourself in my story. Not in the crazy shit, because there's a lot of it, but in the highs and the lows. I know that after everything I've gone through, if I can come out and still love people and challenge myself to love more and see the best in people, I know that you can too. So I'm hoping that we can all come out as beacons of love and light and be the change that we want to see in the world. So with that, you should grab a seat and some popcorn and get ready for this wild ride. So the foundation of the entire story is that I am a pastor's kid. And I mean, like, we had sleeping bags and pillows in my dad's office. We would spend the night at church for overnight prayer sessions on weekends. We were there 6, if not 7 days a week. And my dad started the church before I was born. But at the age of 4, the pastor who started the church with my father left. And we were just outside of DC. So it was a very multicultural church. And the pastor who replaced the head pastor was a Black man. So overnight, our church became an all-Black church. And we were one of 2 or 3 white families that remained. And then the following year, they opened up an elementary school. So we were there 6 to 7 days a week easily. And quite literally grew up in the church. And this shaped so much of my childhood and so much of my entire life. At the age of 11, my parents split and we moved in with my grandparents. They had a 2-bed, 1.5 bathroom house. So you can just imagine how crowded it was and how crazy it was. I had a very influential adult in my life call me a nickname that essentially meant whore, to the point where that became my nickname, which was ironic because I started going to a middle school where I was teased for not only being poor, but had no friends because I had raised my hand in the 7th grade and said that I was going to remain a virgin until the day I was married. So it was a weird circumstance. And by the time I was 13, I told my dad I wanted to go to a boarding school. Thankfully, he, being the rock star that he is, helped me apply to different boarding schools. And because we're still poor, I thankfully got accepted to an all-girls private global boarding school in Northern Virginia, which we chose because of one major thing. It allowed all juniors to intern on Capitol Hill. So my junior year of high school, I interned for the late and great Congressman John Lewis, which is why I decided to go there. Those years were some of the best years of my life. I met women from all over the world who were incredibly brilliant. I was told that I could do and be anything. I was teased for having all Black friends and joining the BSU. But it was what I was comfortable with, and it always felt like home to me. So when senior year came and I was looking at schools, I spent my freshman year of college at Rochester Institute of Technology, where I majored in photography, but quickly realized that I was not great at photography and hated the cold. So I quickly transferred back home. I went to Howard University because everyone said study what you love. So I did Afro-American Studies and Administration of Justice. I worked full-time for my 4 years there. And in my third year there, I was sexually assaulted at my job. And this is when shit starts to get crazy. My manager at the time, who is now my best friend, stood up for me in a way that was going to cost her and everyone I worked with their jobs. So I decided to quit and needed to figure out how to make money fast. It was on my spring break, and I went to this bar where I ended up meeting my future boyfriend, a cute bartender that I thought I would have a one-night stand with, but he gave me herpes, so we ended up in a 2-year relationship. And it was there that someone suggested I work at a place that I didn't know at the time was a strip club. I kept applying to all of these restaurants, and no place would hire me because I didn't have experience. So I ended up waitressing at the strip club for a while. The guy that I was dating, who didn't tell me he had herpes and gave it to me, he was an alcoholic. He was suicidal. He dealt drugs. So to say that that's when the shit started to hit the fan is a bit of an understatement. Life started to get crazy, and that's really when I started to compromise on a lot of things. We were together for about 2 years before we broke up. And then it was only 2 months after we broke up before I met my very abusive ex-husband. It was at that same strip club that I had then quit that I went back to just to get some drinks, where I met my ex-husband. He also used to work there and was just there shooting pool one night. I didn't know that he was married at the time. When I did find out, he told me about the charges that his ex-wife had against him. And I trusted that if he was going to tell me something like that, that he had changed and that he would never do something like that to me. So we eventually moved in together, and all the abuse started. When I say all, I mean all. The physical abuse was just the start of it. The mental and emotional abuse was exponentially worse than anything I ever physically endured. He cheated on me the entirety of our almost 9 years on and off again relationship, but he had so much childhood abuse that I really thought that my love could heal him. And just to be very clear, like 10 out of 10, do not recommend. If you are ever in this situation, do not try and love the person out of it. Walk the fuck away. That's the end of my TED Talk. Back to the story. So I got a job as a government contractor, and we living together at that time, but he lost his job. So we were getting eviction notices because he made 2 or 3 times as much as I did. So every month we're dealing with this. And finally, I decide to go back to the strip clubs, but this time not as a server, this time as a stripper. That was almost the beginning of the end. Thankfully, nobody thought that I belonged. I mean, the girls thought I was undercover, and the guys just literally felt like I didn't fit in there. So I thankfully never got too comfortable because I quite literally didn't fit in, which is a good thing in retrospect. During that time, we had an eviction hearing that led to his eventual arrest. And crazy as it sounds, but maybe not too crazy, during that time in jail, he actually got saved by my brother. Because I jokingly told him that the only way we could ever make this work is with Jesus, which he took really seriously. And so I paid for his collect calls to talk to my brother because I did not want to talk to him about Jesus while I was working in strip clubs. So after that, I quit stripping because I thought it's really weird for my boyfriend to be a Christian. And then broke up with him because I wanted nothing to do with Jesus. And then got saved myself. And then after about 2 years, I quit my great government job that I had right after I was a stripper and moved to California to go to Bible college. However, I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I saw that with him. And I thought he had changed. So we got married. But nothing changed, except for the physical abuse, except for one time towards the very end. It was 20 days into our marriage, the first time that he told me that he wanted a divorce. He still cheated the whole time and was abusive in every other way possible. After not even 1 year of marriage, we moved to Pennsylvania in hopes that that might help us. I went to another Bible college because that was my passion at the time. But after years of the abuse and infidelity, I started cheating on him and moved to Ohio with my brother and sister-in-law when he did finally get physically violent with me again in our marriage. I fell in love with someone in Ohio. He told me that he was in love with someone else. We both seemed to be building our own lives apart from each other. While I was there, we found out that my grandfather had stage 4 cancer. And my brother and I immediately drove from Ohio back home to Maryland to see him. While I was on that trip, I had recently started a job and they laid me off. I remember driving back with my brother to Ohio and thinking to myself, I'll just start dancing again for money. And that was an awful fucking decision. All the guys there still said that I didn't belong. It was the second time in my life, the first being at the first strip club that I worked at, where I did not consciously consent to having sex with someone. I was held up at gunpoint. I was hanging out with a pimp and major drug dealer pretty regularly, to the point where my brother gave me an ultimatum that if I did not stop doing those things, that I would have to move out of his house. And thankfully, I loved living with my brother and sister-in-law so much that I decided to give up those things so that I wouldn't have to move out of their home and that I could stay with them. And shortly after that, I got a government contracting job. So, ironically, now that I wasn't working on my marriage for the first time, my ex-husband wanted to. So I decided to end the relationship that I had started. He said that he was ending his, and we agreed to work on things. That is not what happened, and he eventually had me serve with divorce papers, which at the time I thought was the worst thing in the world, but in the end realized was the greatest blessing ever. My job was ending at that same time, and I had my first shot at freedom. I essentially left with the clothes on my back and the breath in my lungs, but I was free and alive. So that was all that mattered. I remember telling one of my good friends in Ohio that I didn't have anything. I was crying, telling her I quite literally didn't even have a trash can or a shower curtain. And when I left, she gave me a gift card to Target for a shower curtain that I still have to this day. And it was people like that in my life that made a world of difference. People who believed in me, people who supported me, people who loved me during that period of time that made me want to make the world a better place with love. So, where's a girl to go after this? Well, it seems that a Wikipedia article would have the answer. I kept hearing about St. Petersburg, Florida, and finally Googled it, and it was quite literally a Wikipedia article that made my heart sing. And I will never forget the night that I told my brother and sister-in-law, I'm moving to St. Pete. I had never been there. I knew nothing about it other than this gym. I had been following on YouTube, and this pastor that one of my friends from my California Bible college told me that I would actually probably appreciate. All my friends and family were really confused because I knew no one there and was literally moving there based off of a Wikipedia article. And 1 month after I moved there, my divorce was finalized, which was probably one of the lowest points of my life, shockingly. I remember that night trying to drink and get high to the point that I never wanted to remember that night. I felt like all my hopes and dreams died that night. And yet, that night, I have never felt the presence of God the way that I did that night. I feel like in a night that I desperately wanted to forget my life, that God reminded me that he or she was right there with me all along, especially then. And I felt the presence of God that night with me in a way that has forever broken me. My relationship with God got the most real it has ever been since that time in my life. So much of what I was wondering during that time is, where do I go from here? I felt like I had completely hit rock bottom in my life, and I didn't know how I was ever going to make a difference in the world without my ex-husband. I started the healing process of my marriage and my life through therapy and my church. I am so grateful to everyone who stood by me during that time, because I would have never made it had it not been for all the people who loved me, stood by me, supported me during that time. It was in St. Pete 6 years ago that I got into project management and initially started in construction, which, imagine every stereotype you have and 10x it. Like, the owner of the company used to send porn to the guys in the morning without knowing my background and would literally ask them, do you think Lauren's into this? Shit like that. He would literally talk about how dirty people with herpes were at lunch, and I would just have to keep all my composure to myself during those moments. So when his company went under, I was not sad. I eventually got a job offer for a corporate company in St. Louis. And after crying for 2 days before accepting the offer, I finally said yes and moved to St. Louis. And where St. Pete had offered me healing, St. Louis offered me stability and the ability to finally stand on my own 2 feet. And that is where I met John Paul, now my ex-boyfriend and best friend. He was, for a year and a half, the most incredible gift a girl could ever ask for. He set the bar so fucking high. And that's saying a lot because after my marriage and divorce, I had set it pretty goddamn high. He was my biggest cheerleader, and he believed in me more than I believed in myself. He used to ask me all the time, "What do you mean when you say that you want to make a difference in the world?" He was trying to be supportive, and I was so frustrated with myself that I literally did not know how to answer that question, which let me know that I hadn't done anything about it in 15 years. And lit a fire under my ass to start finally doing something about it. So when we finally broke up, because I didn't want children, unfortunately, shortly after we moved to Jacksonville, Florida together, I decided that I was going to go all in on this. I was not only going to figure out what I meant, but I was actually going to put action to it. And I wasn't going to lower my standards because he had raised the bar so high. So I had to figure out how I was going to raise the bar again, which meant I had to probably grow and heal some more. So this whole year of 2024 has been a year of healing and growth and discovery and finding my voice, figuring out what the hell do I mean when I say I want to make a difference in the world with love. I thought it would look like starting a love movement right away, but it actually looked like dealing with my shit. It looked like more healing, more forgiveness, more stretching of myself to love more. That looks like having more grace with the church and Christians. Not because of anything I faced, but I found myself very frustrated with how the church has treated the people that I've loved. So going into 2025, I'm committing to being less judgmental and more loving and understanding of religious people. So this is where you all come in, and I hope that you all are almost done with your popcorn because the drama is done. And thank God. To me, God is love, and love looks like something. And that doesn't have to look the same to you. I don't care if it's nature, animals, Buddha that inspires you. I just want you to feel more loved and to love others more. So if I can love people as much as I do after everything I've been through, I hope that you can challenge yourselves to love more as well. I'm trying to start a love movement, and I'm hoping that I can get 1 million people to commit to loving more and challenging themselves every day to be the change that they want to see in this world. So, will you join me and commit to loving more every day? I am going to give you an exhaustive amount of examples in the coming interviews that I'm going to do with people. So if you challenge yourself to see yourself in every person, this should be kind of easy. So, can a pastor's kid turned abused woman, turned shitty ex-stripper, start a love movement? Only with you, but let's fuck around and find out. Tag 5 people who you think could help make the world a better place with more love, and let's see what we can do together. Peace.